everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining our club. I am Kimberly Patton. I don't know if Kathy had mentioned to you, she is an Alabama Master Beekeeper. And I am currently working towards becoming an Alabama Master Beekeeper. Also, I am an Alabama Master Beekeeper Journeyman. So this part of the requirements is getting out there to get your master's, is you have to go out and put your education and your knowledge about bees forward. So this is what I'm pushing forward and pursuing, and hopefully I'll be able to be a full-time fledged master like Kathy. And then of course, her dad doesn't need a master title, he just has it already down.
It's a grandbaby.
He is, like I said. And so sometimes, like I said, with being a master, I mean, it is a title. And David, of course, has way more knowledge. You know, he doesn't have the time and so forth. He's living the full beekeeper dream. So it's just one of those titles that I personally wanted to try to strive for. So here I am.
And I'm sorry, we have you and Nelson pursuing his master?
Not yet, Nelson's
I think
pursuing
we got
his
two in the club that's pursuing their master of beekeepers. You're not, are you, Terry?
No.
You're not, are you, Russell?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a lot of fun. So I do a lot of beekeeper symposiums and conferences. So when I joined the Bee Club, I met David at our farm market during the summer, and I asked him if he wanted to put bees on my property. I didn't want bees. I just wanted the beekeepers' bees. And he came out and took a look, and he was going into fall, and it really wasn't conducive. But he said, you know, it sounds like you want to be a beekeeper. And weirdly, it was actually my childhood dream. So, coming full circle. Sorry, I get emotional when I talk about that, because I get really happy. I cry when I'm happy, so I'm super happy. It makes me super happy. So I actually love doing this. Today, I'm going to be covering bee biology from a beekeeper's perspective. Not just full biology. We're not just going to only talk about bee body parts. We're going to actually talk about more than physical bee biology. It's kind of round in more into the biology between the bees and also in the hive. So, turn that. So again, Kathy, some of this stuff is going to be redundant of what Kathy has already told us. This is our recommended reading list. You need all of these 3 books. It will give you all the basic knowledge that you're going to really need to successfully be a great beekeeper. There is First Lessons in Beekeeping by Dr. Keith Delaplane. We have Honeybee Biology and Beekeeping by Dr. Dewey Karen. And then we have Backyard Beekeeping by James Till. This is here where it is open free source. David said he will send that to everybody. So if you can immediately go out, you're getting the one book today. If you know, the Honeybee Biology book, I actually do not have that book, but I have this one open free source, and I have this, and then I have several other publications. So there's plenty of resources out there that you can really find. So why bee biology? So first off, the more you know about your bees, the better beekeeper you're going to be. So it's more than just keeping bees and knowing how to keep bees. You've got to know the physicals and physical traits and different things about the bees. You're going to be working with a live insect, and knowing this information is going to make you a better beekeeper, where you're going to be able to assess what's happening in your colonies and what's happening with your hive. So the differences, we're going to go into a little terminology here. Hive versus colony. So a colony is honeybees in the biological term of a nest of Apis mellifera, aka the honeybee. So, and the hive is a man-made container that is designed to house the colony. Think of a colony of honeybees as a superorganism. A healthy colony of honeybees is greater than a sum of individual members, and the colony will protect their queen at all costs. So bees, yes, you're going to have in a healthy colony 40 to 50,000 bees, but those bees do not work as an individual. They work as a superorganism. They will all come together, and that is the actual colony. So again, we're going honey, Apis mellifera. That is the scientific name. What are honeybees good for? They're good for pollination, honey, wax, much more. People use them for venom and other things. So, but let's go back down to even further basics. What do honeybees look like? As a beekeeper, you're going to find out that everybody thinks that anything that flies and can possibly sting, you're supposed to know about because you keep honeybees. We only keep honeybees. We don't keep these other things. So what's the difference? Your honeybees are yellow and brown. They build wax nests in any open cavities. That's honeybees. What are not Apis mellifera? First off, wasps. They're brown. They build paper nests on buildings. We don't deal with those. We're not wasp keepers. Hornets, they're black and white or black and yellow. They make big nests in trees. We also don't keep those. If there's a wasp nest out there, it is not my job as a beekeeper to deal with that. I don't know nothing about them either, other than they can sting and you can deal with those. So yellow jackets are yellow and black. They live in nests in the ground. And then bumblebees, they're big, they're black and yellow or black and light yellow. And they also build nests in the ground and they live in small colonies. None of these we deal with. And as now all of a sudden you become a beekeeper, all of your neighbors and friends, when Kathy said, well, you're now the expert, they also think you're an expert of all of these too. Be ready for that. They possibly call you like, oh, I got some bees over here at my house. Come help me with these bees. I've got some, bees. First, tell them to take a picture and send you a picture of the bees. Because there's a good chance it's yellow jackets. We don't do yellow jackets. That's for some other pest control person. So the next thing we're going to talk about, let me get all these on here. I didn't realize that.
Look at all this fun stuff.
Oops, one too many. Okay, so let's just go with the whole full picture. This is the anatomy biology part that I'm going to touch with you. I'm not going to go deep down inside this. You guys are not going to remember all the different bee parts. If I did go really far deep into the biology of a bee, you wouldn't remember it all today. It's too much information. And like Kathy said, you're just here today to touch on some things and start building questions. So the first thing is we are going to recognize that bees are insects. And we know that insects have 3 main body parts. So we're going to show it's the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Those are our 3 parts. We're going to start with the head. Starting here, we've got the proboscis tongue. The proboscis tongue is, they can form their tongue into a straw. And they use that straw, that proboscis tongue is what they stick down into the flower to suck up that nectar. They'll suck up that nectar into, which I don't have on here, 1 of 2 stomachs. They actually have, bees have 2 stomachs. Worker bees, let me take that back. Female worker bees have 2 stomachs. Drones do not have 2 stomachs. But female worker bees have 2 stomachs. They have a honey stomach, and then they have their nectar stomach, and then they have their own personal stomach. So the honey that they, or the nectar that they go out and collect to bring back to the hive to regurgitate out and to give to another worker bee for them to store away and reduce down into honey is not going into the same stomach. Kind of like cows. They've got 3 stomachs. They chew their grass, and it comes back up to chew the cud, and it goes. They have separate stomachs. So you're not actually. It's not actually bee vomit. When people are like, oh, honey's bee vomit, no, it's actually not. It goes into a whole separate chamber, which is not their actual food
But
stomach
it sounds like more fun.
It does. That is true. I mean, it's like,
they did theoretically throw it up.
Yes, they did. They did. The next part we're going to talk about is their mandibles. Now, their mandibles are basically like they're chewing, like their teeth parts. They'll use the mandibles for things like at stages when they are between 4 to 16 days old, they start secreting their wax secretions come out of this end abdomen area on the underside. Those wax flakes literally come out of the body of a bee. They bring those wax flakes up, they manipulate it with their mandibles, and that's what they use to build that honeycomb. So when you first get a brand new package of bees and you see all that beautiful white honeycomb, no, all of that was made out of your brand new bees, straight out of the bottom of their abdomens. So it's scientifically weird and gross and interesting all at the same time. First time I saw that, I said, oh, that comes out of there, what? So, but they use their mandibles, like I said, for chewing wax. If they have like wood that needs to be, chewed down, or if you go to having to feed your bees and you put down a layer of newspaper in between there and pour some sugar on top, and you come back and there's chewed up newspaper, well, it was those mandibles that did that. The next part we're going to talk about is their antenna. Their antenna is used for things, sensing vibrations and pheromones. The bees live, their colony is run and driven by pheromones, mostly created by the queen. So they have to pick these up. So interesting things with bees, yes?
What is pheromone again?
Pheromones is secretions, or I don't know exactly how to say it. Smells, thank you. I was going to say, they pick it up by smells.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with bees, so they have 5 eyes. That's the first thing, I did the 2nd grade bee program, and the kids are always like, what, they have 5 eyes? Yes. So bees have 3 eyes on the very top of their head. There's their ciliae. They use that for directional navigation. Then they have two big compound eyes, kind of like big fly eyes on their head. But in the hive, it's dark in there. There's no light bulbs. So they actually have 5 eyes, but they live a good portion of their life in the dark. And that is why that antenna with the pheromones for smell is so important for them to be able to communicate with each other, because they're doing this in the dark. The other thing that's interesting with bees is they actually have 4 wings. They have 2 sets of wings. They have a forewing and they have a hind wing, and those 2 wings are actually joined together. In between those 2 wings, there's a bunch of little hooks that are called hamuli, and they literally can just hook those wings together to form one big wing on each side of their body. When they go to fly, they hook them together. But when they get back in the hive, they actually will unhook their wings so that way they can lay flat on their bodies. They don't have like a folding butterfly. Like butterfly, you know how their wings are, big and flat, but moths can kind of tuck them in. So they don't have, that's why they kind of, like I said, it's 2 separate wings. They have these hooks, they can separate them. Could you imagine being a beehive and everybody had these big open wide wings? They got to tuck them somewhere. So going back to, now that was, the wings are located in the thorax area. So let's go into the abdomen. So the abdomen here, they've got sphericals. Those dot sphericals, that is where they breathe through. They don't have a nose up front. There's no little cute bee button nose on the front of a bee. Their breathing apparatuses are these whole sphericals. They're connected straight to the trachea, which from there, it's not like they don't breathe oxygen per se, but that's where they get, well, they do oxygen, but that's where, between the oxygen, the hemoglobin, and all the other things that are inside the bee that are not blood, but bee blood, that's where all that stuff interchanges and starts, is through the sphericals. If you get into things like breeding your own bees, trying to, when you're moving bees over and everything, and you're scooping a little larva to try to create your own queens, it's very important, like things like when you're doing that, you can't flip a bee over in the royal jelly, because she will drown. Because evidently they're sphericals that, like I said, they're formed on just the one side of them. And I'm not positive with that. I needed to look that up. It is true. It's just on the one side. Yeah.
Until they become an actual pupa, they do not.
So they only breathe on the one side. Okay, so that's, because I know you can't flip them over. But I knew at some point in time they had sphericals on both sides of their body. And like I said, I never really, I guess that had to be a pupa stage. It's one of those questions sometimes as you learn it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's part of what these studying classes are doing. Me being, trying to get to my master beekeepers makes me have to go into further of learning about these things, so that way I can share them with you guys. It makes me a better beekeeper in the end, because, like I said, I love bees. The next thing we're gonna go to is the bees have, they have 6 legs. They have 3 sets of legs. They have their forelegs, their mid legs, and then their hind legs. And the hind legs where you're gonna find the corbicula. The corbicula is the pollen basket. At the corbicula, which is actually this little section of leg, normally it's a little cut out a little bit further where the pollen pellet can kind of sit. There's a little spike there, and that bee will take the pollen that has collected to it when it's gone to the flowers, and take that with a little bit of nectar. They kind of mix it up, and they kind of mush it around with their mandibles, and they push it down with their other legs, and then they're going to pack it into the right back of this corbicula basket. So that is the corbicula. That's that hind leg. That is the corbicula area, and that there is a pollen pellet. And so they will take, this bee will take all this pollen. They literally will use their other legs and just scrape it down themselves, just work it down, and just keep working it down. The reason they do this is the plumose. It's the hair on the honeybee. Plumose is it's branched like a feather. The reason it's branched like a feather is it has multiple branches that create the large surface area with the electrostatic properties. The pollen actually kind of will jump to a bee. And it's not like it's just gonna jump to its hind leg. This bee is gonna collect it all over. And like I said, then it's gonna use its foreleg and mid leg to scrape it down and put it on that back leg and that back pollen pocket. So, and that makes them better pollinators.
Do you remember why? Why does it jump onto them? Do you remember?
The electrostatic, so it's electrostatic.
They become positive when they fly.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. So Kathy, yes. So the bees have a positive electrostatic charge, and pollen actually has a negative charge. And so when the bees get on a flower, one of the things is they vibrate at a certain frequency, which actually tells these flowers to release pollen and the positiveness of their hair and their vibration and the negative of the pollen that's sitting on the flower actually just jumps on them, kind of like two magnets kind of being sucked together. That's basically what is happening to them. So
You can blow your neighbor's mind, so y'all are
yeah.
lots more.
Like I said, you're gonna be like, what? And this is why she was like, well, I'm just gonna touch bases with things, and that's kind of what I am too, is trying to touch them briefly. It goes way deeper. But by the end of this 2 hours, you're gonna walk out here going, oh my goodness, what all did those people say? But trust me, if you keep coming to the classes, you ask the questions, you come to the club, you do the symposiums and these kind of things, and at some point, you know, you're between your YouTube and books and so forth, you will know all of it, or you will have the confidence enough to be able to deal with your bees if you don't know it all. I'm constantly learning. You're constantly learning stuff too. Kathy's really, really big with the knowledge of what's blooming and different seasons. So not only just becoming a beekeeper, you also become a gardener. You become a weather forecaster. Yeah, I mean,
A botanist?
Yes, a botanist. You're gonna also learn about pesticides later, and so there's a lot of different things that really come with knowing about bees and being a beekeeper that don't even have much to do with bees, that are all fascinating, that bring it right back to bees again. So the next thing we're gonna talk about is the development of a honeybee. So there's 3 different times between the worker, the queen worker, and drone honeybees. So a queen is gonna take 16 days going from egg to full hatching adult. A worker takes 21 days and a drone takes 24 days. You can see here on this chart, the queen worker and drone for the first 1 to 3 days are all on track. They are an egg. At days 4 through 9, they are a larva. This is when it differentiates, when they turn into a pupa. So at the pupa stage, the queen is going to be there from 10 to 15 days. On day 16, she is going to be emerge as a full-grown adult. A worker is there from 10 to 20 days, and the female worker bee will emerge at day 21, and then the drones are there from day 10 to 23, and he will emerge at day 24. And that's something significant that you're going to learn about. We'll touch it again later, and you'll touch again later afterwards. Okay. Oops. Uh-oh. Did I smush the wrong button? Oh, there we go. My font is weirding out on me. We don't have the same fonts. I tried to go back and make it to where it was like all fonts that we had, so it's kind of weirding out. So the life cycle. So we're just going to talk about a worker bee, a female worker bee from egg to adult. So the queen bee is going to find a cell that's ready. She's going to lay an egg. From day 1 to 3, that egg is going to start out an egg standing straight up in the cell. By day 3, it's going to actually kind of fall over, and it's going to kind of lay down in the cell. On day 4, a worker bee is going to come and it's going to give it royal jelly, and it'll start feeding it royal jelly all the way up until day 10. At day 10, this female worker nurse bee is going to cap over this cell. And at that point is when this worker bee will go into its pupa stage, and it'll go from a standing up larva to a kind of a translucent bee. Then it starts getting its actual bee colors and parts and so forth, and then it emerges a full-grown bee at day 21. So let's see. So again, the queen inspects the cell. If the cell is ready. So the 2 things, if the queen determines that it's a worker-sized cell, she's going to lay a fertilized egg. If a queen gets to a cell and it is larger, she will determine that it is a drone-sized cell. She will lay an unfertilized egg. So the interesting thing also with bees is bees have a grandfather, but they have no father. So the queen decides if it's fertilized or not fertilized. And like I said, it gets very fascinating. It gets very in-depth. It's one of those kind of confusing of what to wrap your head around. This here is a picture of eggs, beautifully laid eggs in a frame of honeycombs. You can see here you got a double egg. Sometimes when the queens are newly mated, they're not always good at what they're doing and so forth. Now and again you'll find 2 eggs, then multiple eggs in a cell. Later down the road you'll hear things about if a queen is missing, and you get worker bees that will revert and start laying eggs, and they will do it in a whole messed up way. And that's one of those things about knowing the biology of the beehive more than just the bee, with knowing when you're going to have issues with that. And those will come, things will come later in some of the other classes. During the spring buildup, the colony population, the queen is going to lay 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day. That's a day. And she can lay between 50,000 to 50,000 eggs in 25 to 33, 33 days. So that's a lot of eggs you can fill out really quick when it comes down to, when you get your bees, in your new package of bees in the spring, or your new, and we're talking about buildup and how many bees that you have. And we start talking about, a frame of brood, and if it's totally full, well, she filled that up. She can fill that up in what, it's a day, right? She can fill up one side in a day of a frame. So, I mean, if she's doing that one whole side in one day, it doesn't take very long for them to lose enough room very quickly. And this is why Kathy was saying, you make sure to give yourself that inspection time, because at any given time, you might not have enough room for your bees. And if you don't have enough room for your bees, they leave, or at least half of them do. So when you lose half of your bees, you've just lost half of your production. So you'll learn about more of that later. That's, like I said, it's a lot to absorb, but let's see. Eggs remain in the cell as an egg for 3 days. The European, the Italian, the one that Kathy had recommended that you guys kind of start out with, their egg hatching averages 72 to 76 hours after it was laid to go into the first larval stage. And that's at 94.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Bees work very hard at temperature controlling inside of their hives also. So yes, Kathy's telling you, put your bees in the full sun. We need them in full sun for other reasons like hive beetle pests, to try to take care of those. The bees know how to air condition and fan down their space. They also know how to keep it warm in the wintertime. They actually can dislocate their wings from, kind of in the thorax area. And then they all bundle and ball together, and they all just sit there and shiver together. And when they sit there and shiver together, they're creating that body heat to keep it at an optimal temperature. Because at this next sentence, you'll see, if the temperature drops to 85.6 degrees, less than 1% of those eggs would be able to hatch. So that's a big, huge loss. So bees, like I said, are very temperamental with temperature, and they control it. God has made them fully functional to be able to take care of those things. Some of the beehives, if you go up north, some of those keepers have to support and wrap the beehives. So, they do actually wrap the hives, insulate them. Down here in our area down here, we don't wrap and insulate them. We have very few cold days, so we really don't have to worry about those type situations. But if you do get on YouTube and you do start researching some of these other great keepers, and they're talking about things that they do in their area, remember what they're doing up north in Ohio, some of it is relevant with me and how I can take care of my bees here in Alabama, but not all of it. I don't need to put stuffing at the top of my hive under the inner cover for moisture during the winter time. Moisture's not gonna affect us like that here. But those people are still good resources for you guys to all go and look up their stuff and see what they say. One of the things every beekeeper will tell you is you can ask 10 beekeepers one question and you're gonna get 12 answers. It's not even everybody's got a different answer. You're gonna get multiple answers from at least 2 of us.
And if you ask me, it's probably close to 15, because
Yeah.
I got all kinds of options.
Yes, and there's always options. There's always options. And then still in the end, no matter what everybody has told you, you still have to go home and figure out the best way for you and your bees. Now, this is my 3rd year. In the beginning, my bees are not in full sun. I don't have full sun for them. They are in dappled sun. Do they do great because of it? No, they don't. Do I know it's a problem? Yes, I do. So after this, going into year 4, I'm like, okay, 2 of my hives cannot stay and live where they live at any longer. I've lost bees, this is the 3rd year in a row that I've lost bees from those 2 specific locations. I can keep wasting my money every year, or I can figure out a better place to move my hive. And this is when she was talking about find your location. I tried it. I kept trying. I was like, well, I'll support them. I'll do the best I can, but those 2 in that certain location just do not get enough sun or whatever it is. The other pests can be prevalent because it doesn't get hot enough, the hive beetles, those kind of things. And those things matter. Those are the opinions of different keepers and going to these clubs and these meetings, is you'll hear these things versus you just trying to struggle in your own yard, figuring it out, reading a book, looking at a YouTube. You come, you talk, you meet other keepers and whatnot. And we all love to talk about bees. I mean, we can go on and on and on for days about it.
Hey, Kim, you were talking about, we have a place on the property. I have very few hive beetles in my hives, but I've got one place that we will not take them down to
Mhm.
on the same piece of property because it will become a hive beetle.
Idle Haven. And
Yeah,
yeah, and it's just, and I actually
So
have these in a
literally, you've got to-
curve.
and you may have to adjust.
Yeah, I mean,
your
it's just a curve, they're not even 5 feet from each other, you know, or actually
Yeah.
maybe like 8 feet from each other, and this big
Just
long
maybe
curve.
just, you know,
And the
just-
sun kind of dapples through my yard, you know, all through the day, but for some reason, these two hives just don't do good, but the ones on the other side do really well, and they come out every year with bees going into next spring. So that tells me I need to take those hives over there, and I'm gonna shove them over here with the other ones, unless Ted lets me put them on the roof. I'm trying to get them put, I don't know, hire something, I don't even know.
They'll do great on the roof, but that's a pain in the behind.
Yes, for me, yeah, especially if I'm like being attacked, or they're all in your face and you're trying to get away from them, you can't, you know, you jumping from the second story. I thought about that too, I was like, oh,
And
maybe
getting
that's
the
not a
honey
good
super
idea.
down, think about it. before you
Yeah.
get up there.
That's
'Cause
true, oh.
They will make honey up there. It will be a great hive up there, but you gotta be able to get your stuff down.
Something down, yeah, so like I said, so that's all those things that, you know, you're thinking, you know, oh, that'd be a great place, may not be a great place to begin with, you know, at all, yeah, because where I first started putting them, I was trying to do the edge of the wood line, so they're facing out over this beautiful kudzu patch. No, like you said, every time I would go down there, there's rocks and sticks and all this leaf brush, and I drop my hive tool, then I can't even find it in the leaves down there, and I mean, those kind of things, and yeah, that come to find out, that's a, you know, dirt, that's hive beetle central area for them to breed down right underneath there, so they immediately had to come out of the woods and up to the backyard. This right here that I'm showing you has a really great example of things that when you're going into a hive and doing your inspections, of things you're gonna be looking for. First off, you're gonna see some nurse bees up here. They are patrolling these frames. But you can see this is probably not an egg, but it's a very beginning larva. And you can see the different larva stages and how they get bigger and bigger. And this is kind of how a queen bee will lay. She'll lay in a pattern where it'll start out. You can see like these ones were the younger eggs and they've got older, and she just kind of worked her way out. So when you're doing inspections, sometimes you're gonna look in and you're like, well, I didn't see the queen. I don't go in there looking for queen. I go in there looking for, I got bad eyes. I go in looking for the big larva, and then I just work my way from the big larva down to the smallest I can see, and I pray there's eggs there, because if there's eggs there, you always have a queen. So as long as you can find eggs, there's a queen there, and at that point, I'm not disrupting my girls anymore. They need to get back to work, close it up, I'm on to the next one. Because you can spend way too long in a hive and get overheated quick. Especially, I wear a full suit. I get stung very easily, you know, whatever. I don't like being stung. I full suit up head to toe. I wear the gloves. Sometimes I still get stung, but you know, you do what you do to protect yourself, and I don't want to disrupt them too much, because the more often I feel like if I disrupt them, they see me coming with that suit and they're already just pissed off. Bees do remember you. They do remember, and then they tell their offspring about you. So this last season, in fact, oh my gosh, so I pulled honey, and so I had to do it by myself. Ted wasn't really available, so I pulled the honey myself. For that next solid week, my back garden, I could not water the plants out back. As soon as I get out, they'd be like, "Nee," and all up in my face, and I'm running back, and I'm like, Ted, you gotta water the garden today. Bees are still pissed off at me. And they were pissed at me for like a solid week. I couldn't even walk to my car. There would be, and it wouldn't just be like one bee, it would be multiples. And I'm like, they're in my face, they're chasing me around. I'm like, all right, I ain't trying to be stung, and I'm not suiting up to just water the garden. I did one day though, actually put on the veil and went out and watered because Ted wasn't available. So after day 3, the egg hatches into the larva. That's from days 4 to 9. The little white worm, which is the larva, it swims in a pool of food called royal jelly. Royal jelly is created in the hypopharyngeal and mandibular glands, which is in the head of the nurse bees that are from from 6 to 14 days old. So that's one of the things that I find very interesting, is the food that they feed their beginning larva bee, and then the queen bee, she will actually get this food throughout her life, is created in their own head, out of their own, you know, from their own secretion, their own glandular secretions. And so, and they actually say that royal jelly is like the most, we still don't fully know what it is, but it's like the most complete food ever.
Mhm.
Yeah, so.
Interesting enough that royal jelly, how good the royal jelly is how well those bees are fed, their nutrition. So that's why I'm telling y'all, when I said you're gonna need to feed your bees, that will make sure that you've got stronger bees to begin with, That doesn't mean when you have honey supers on to feed them, but to begin with, to make your bees as strong as possible, so that they're making better royal jelly for their babies, you need to be feeding those babies.
Yes. So they have to have good quality food in themselves for their bodies to produce the royal jelly that's going to produce the future offspring. So like I said, it's a full round circle with how these, how God created these bees to take care of themselves. So the royal jelly, okay, as I said, it's fed to the larvae in the colony at the beginning of their lives. And the queen will get it, she'll receive it exclusively and in an abundance. And we've also done studies too, the royal jelly that the queen gets and from her larva stage all the way through her life is actually a better, richer royal jelly than that of what the workers get. That's the other thing that they have determined. And so the royal jelly the workers get isn't even quite as good. So they find the healthiest bees in the colony that are making the richest royal jelly to give to the queen. So that's like I said, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that queen is as strong and as healthy as possible as a super colony organism. So, and a larva will receive 10,000 visits by the nurse bees and increase 1,500 times before it hatches, before it comes out as that adult. So, normal healthy larvae are glistening pearly white. This is important. You'll learn about this further when you get to the pests and diseases. If you start seeing brood or larva that is nice, glistening and pearly white, again, this is part of that biology in a hive. It's more than just the actual physical body parts of a bee. You have biology of the actual hive itself and finding what's wrong with it at different stages if you happen to come across these problems. In the pupa stage, which is day 10 to adult, this is when they actually start becoming bees. Up to that, they were a worm. So this is when the larva actually filled up that whole entire cell and it's in that standing up position and it gets capped over. And that's when they start forming their actual bee parts, their, the head, abdomen, thorax, their legs, their wings, their eyes, and so forth. And that's when they start getting their bee colors and characteristics, is in that pupa stage. And so when you go into a hive, and sometimes I do like a Varroa inspection, and I will actually, not worker cells, but I will pull open some drone brood cells. They're bigger, they stay in there longer. The Varroa mite pests really like those. And like I said, that pest class will take you deeper into it, but they really like them because they stay in the brood as long. The Varroa mite lays its eggs and hatches and feeds on bees and the fat hemoglobin in the bee bodies, or what they call the fat body of the bees. And so since the drones stay in the cells 2.5 days longer, they have longer to produce and feed and so forth. So I'll sometimes pull them out in this stage to inspect them to see if I have any Varroa mites possibly on my drones, see what they're looking like and everything. Kind of just inspect them. I don't want to mess with my workers, but I can sacrifice some drones to do some pupa inspections. And so I do recommend if you're wanting to do pupa inspections on your bees, to do it on the drone bees. So now we're going to talk about the castes. There are 3 castes of bees in the colony. You have your worker bee, and you can see it's got a shorter, average size abdomen. It's very striped, yellow and brown, yellow and black. She's got just regular size eyes, and her wings go to about the very end abdomen of her body. The queen, she has that super long abdomen. You're gonna find your queen normally has like a brighter orange or brown abdomen. It's not the same stripe color like the female worker bees. She's way more distinct. Her wings are longer, but they do not pass her abdomen. She's got a bigger, shinier, I forget what that area is called now on their back all of a sudden. Thorax. Oh, that's right, the thorax. So thank you. So it's a bit shinier on the worker bees. Their thorax is fuzzier. So when a brand new worker bee comes out, you'll see it's all real fuzzy and it's really like light colored, fuzzy, real hairy. And as your bees get older, you'll start seeing where the hair on the back of their thorax is gone, their wings get raggedy looking, and you can start really seeing their age. The last bee we're gonna talk about, and then, so the worker bees, she has stinger. She can sting you once. And if she stings you and her stingers barb into you, when she goes to fly away and she cannot release that stinger, it will rip out her intestines, her stinger, her intestines, and she will die. So she'll only sting once. They can sting multiple times if she manages to unlodge from you and not rip out her intestines. So, the queen bee, her stinger is not quite as barbed, so she can actually sting you multiple times. Normally queen bees do not sting you. They normally use their stinger to kill off another rival queen that might be in her colony. And so it's rare for a queen bee to sting you. That's why you'll see people, like when they go to mark their queens, will just, and they pick up the queen and they're just holding her and all this stuff. And I'm like, y'all are crazy, that bee is gonna sting you. Well, she's not really most likely to sting you. She can, you squish her or whatever, she's uncomfortable, she might, but the likelihood is that she probably won't. I don't take that chance because I'm still scared. And I have big fat gloves on, and I don't want to squish her. The last thing we're going to talk about is the drone. If you can see with this drone bee, he's got big, huge compound eyes. His big, huge compound eyes are used for when they go into the mating flights. He's got to find this girl here. When she's doing her mating flights, he has to be able to see her flying. So we'll talk about it in another slide, but it's a drone congregation area. So when the bees, she goes on her mating flight, this big guy has got to keep up with her. He's got to find her. That's why he's got those big, old, huge, massive compound eyes. The other thing we know with the male bees is they, again, I told you they only have one stomach. They don't need a second stomach. They don't go out and collect nectar. They don't need the nectar stomach. They also do not have stingers. The boys do not defend the hive at all. They've got a bigger, fatter abdomen, the bigger eyes. The only thing that we know that the male drones do is their job is to mate with the queen. That's the only thing that we actually know that they do. Couch potatoes. But they are still very important. So again, 3 different castes of bees in the colony. In a healthy colony, there's approximately, I've personally had a hive where I've had two queens in a hive. They worked well together and that hive did really good. I'm not sure why there was 2 queens in there, but I didn't question it. They do what they want to do. You can read all the books, you can ask all the people, you can do all the tutorials or whatever, but bees didn't read the book. So honestly, that's the other thing, is everything you're learning here may not stay, you're like, well, that girl said, well, the bees didn't hear me. And you're gonna find that. So you find one queen, she can live up to a few years. She is responsible for laying eggs, producing pheromones, and she has an unbarbed stinger. The male drones, there are probably about 500 to 1,000 of them in a hive. Their job is responsible for mating with the queen. He has no stinger. And a drone will live in the hive until drone eviction. Drone eviction means when resources go down, we've ended their summer, we've gone into fall, the bees are ramping down for winter, they're changing their physiology and things are changing in the hive. Because the drones don't do anything and they are fed and taken care of, they actually get evicted out of the hive. And so the boys are kicked out every fall, and because they do not know how to take care of themselves, they don't get resources, they don't even know how to feed themselves, they get kicked out of the hive to die. So the boys die basically every year. So that's what y'all get for not doing anything. It is, like I said, and it's a hard life. I mean, that's, to know, it's like, hey, you're like, oh, they've got this easy life. Well, at the end of their easy life is immediate death. They don't even get to live as long. The female worker bees, there's between 40 and 50,000 in a healthy colony. They can live anywhere, again, to up to a few weeks to several months, depending on their physiology. So summertime bees do not live as long as wintertime bees. So summertime bees will last about 45, 48 days. A wintertime bee can live like 3 months. So there is a difference in your bees also, and that's also where it's important, what Kathy was talking about, feeding your bees in certain times when we feed our bees and what different things we are feeding them during that time. So like right now, or during the springtime, I would feed, if I want to feed my bees and ramp them up, I'll do a 2-to-1, which is 2 parts water, 1 part sugar. Well, in the wintertime, when I'm putting my bees down for the winter, it's a 1-to-1. So it's 1 part sugar, or the other way. I said it backwards, didn't I? I did, thank you for catching me on that. I said backwards, reverse those. But so I go, 1-to-1. So you want a heavier, thicker syrup in the wintertime. You want a thinner syrup in the summertime. That would help me getting it the right way. So, and there is a big difference. You don't want to give them a really liquidy syrup in the wintertime when they need all that, and they'll have to use all that energy to try to dehydrate out the water to turn the nectar to honey, or that sugar to honey, what they would be using as honey, because it's not honey. Sugar is not honey. That's the other reason we do not feed our bees when their honey super's on, because you do not want to adulterate your honey with sugar. It's two different things. So workers they're responsible for everything else that happens in the colony, and they do have a barbed stinger. Oops. So the female worker bees, the young bees from day 1 to 21. From day 1 to 3, her job, as soon as she hatches, comes out, she emerges at day 21, her first job from day 1 to 3 is to clean. She has to go back, she has to clean her own cell, and her job is to just clean in the hive. They have to, wander around, clean, just do whatever it is that they're told to do to clean. On day 4, they become nurse bees, and that's when, day 4 to 11, nurse bees, that's when they start making the royal jelly in the hypopharyngeal and mandibular glands. And so they go around, they take care of the larvae. So like, they go and nurse bee goes to a cell, and she sees that there's 2 eggs laid in there. Well, they don't need 2 eggs in there. One of those eggs are good. That nurse bee might eat one of those eggs, remove it out of there, so that way there's only one, and then her job is then to put in some royal jelly and start feeding them, all the way up to capping them and taking care of these bees. Days 12 to 17, they have multiple jobs, and they can be varied. They go from queen attendants to nectar ripening, which is fanning down, dehydrating the nectar so it can become honey, storing pollen, also making the wax secretions that come out of their abdomen, on the lower side of their abdomen, to build a comb. And they also have to do undertaker duties. So every now and again, you'll see like bees, they'll be dragging out a dead bee, and they'll be trying to fly it off or drag it off away from the hive. They actually go quite a little distance to, and I've done videos watching the struggle, and them things, they got it. I mean, I imagine dead bee weight is probably like dead people weight, which means like toddler. A little dead toddler weighs a lot, so I can just imagine. And then day 18 to 21, they are the guard bees. Those are the bees that are at the front door, the entrance, making sure that, nobody's coming in, lizards, mice, those kind of things. This slide should actually be next, so I'm gonna come back to it. So the female worker bees, the older field bees, from day 22 to 45. Like I said, summertime, she's only gonna live 45 days. So the bees literally work themselves to exhaustion till their little Energizer battery dies. And so they become foragers, and their job is to gather pollen, nectar, water, and propolis, which is the bee glue. So let's go back to this other. So on this slide here, you're gonna see this is that proboscis tongue. This is a worker bee. She's getting some nectar that's off of my hive tool. That gives a good example of that proboscis tongue. This is worker bees. They are on top of what is freshly laid eggs. So they are actually just monitoring these. They have not started feeding them or giving them royal jelly. They will not do that until starting day 4. This picture here is really cool and interesting because we have multiple things happening in this picture. We have big old pollen pellets in the corbicula. Not only that, but we also have a big old wad of propolis hanging off of this bee's corbicula. And then these 2 bees are actually doing some type of exchange. I don't know if they're doing a nectar exchange, but there's some kind of exchange, possibly a nectar exchange going on there. And they were like that for quite a while. So I know it was actually, like I said, a nectar exchange, and it was more than just a communication situation. So like I said, I thought that was pretty interesting because you got so many different things going on with the bee, the bees all at one time. So let's go to, all right, the queen bee. She can live 3 to 5 years. For most of us beekeepers, David only keeps his queen bees 1 season, mostly, maybe to 2, depending on how good they are. But you don't never keep them probably past 3. How about you, Kathy? Your queen?
I keep them until they die.
Okay,
but they may be pulled out of their original hive and living in a nuke. I will actually replace my nukes, but I want the longevity of the genetics.
See, now listen to this lady here. I know that's probably above your head there. But when it comes to these bees, and we're talking about genetics and things like that, so some people will pinch their queens. She said, well, she's still got longevity to her. She's, I've had her in the hive for a year. Their most optimal laying time is between the first year to the first 2 years. And then after that, they start weaning down. We all get old. The sperm is running low. maybe our eggs are slow, I don't know, we
They'll
just get
swarm
slower.
faster after a year.
Yeah, and that's the other part too, yeah, and they'll swarm faster. So, they'll have that tendency to wanna swarm. We'll get into that in just a minute with the swarming part, but that's, what they're wired to do. So they do have a tendency to do that as they, continue on in age. So we try to use in our hives, the younger queens, but you know, if you can't afford to get a queen every year, your queen can live up to 5, as long as, you know, nothing happens to her.
Right now, they're, because of the viruses and everything.
Yeah, they're not even living that long,
usually
are they?
2 years is about the longest.
About the 2, okay, because I had some others at the conference, they were saying about 3 years, they were still getting about 3 years, but like you said, yeah, and I don't think anybody's keeping their queen bees to 5 years.
We had several, but they, by the year 5, they're not doing.
They're not doing well, okay, so, and then by that point, it's, you know, kind of like a science observation experiment. You know, if you're in it for money and production, you don't keep the weak links, you know, but Kathy has it in a production wise to where, like you said, she's doing it for furthering the genetics and so forth, and she knows how to take, you know, eggs from a really good genetic queen and convert that to where the bees will actually make that into a queen, you know, those eggs into a queen. So she knows how to, you know, make those, you know, her yard very diverse. I know your yard's very diverse.
And that's another advantage about marking your queen also.
Yes, with marking your queens, because, you know, you go in your hive this year, 10 minutes, okay. And, the queen is marked, and then next, you know, when I go in there in the spring and I don't see a queen that's marked, but I have this other queen, there's a good chance that that's a replacement queen. That tells me, well, this one had a marked queen, she's gone, they've replaced her somewhere and I didn't know it. So upon emergence, she is gonna locate her rivals by piping. She's gonna sting them to death to eliminate them. That's where that stinger comes in. Within 7 to 8 days, she takes her mating flights, and about 2 to 5 days after mating, she will begin laying eggs. A virgin queen will take several mating flights for over several days. Once she is mated with up to 20 drones, they say all the way from 20 to 50, and some say less, but on average, we're saying about 20, up to about 20 drones. Then when she goes back to that hive, she will never mate again. She actually will not leave that hive unless they are kicking her out, making her leave because they are swarming. So here's good pictures of bees, again, with the markings. And these are 2 current bees in here. This is my Auburn bee, and I looked at her the other day, and she's got some jacked out wings. She will never fly, but I'm surprised that she actually lived, because we crushed her at an Auburn queen rearing lab. so they were actually gonna pinch her, because at that point she was no longer good for study purpose, but I was like, please don't pinch her. Look, I have a hive that's queenless and really mean, and they've already killed 2 other queens. Let's see what she does, and she's actually still alive. And then I've got my other queen there, and that shows you the difference between, you know, workers and queens. And you'll need to get familiar. So, oops, too many buttons. So the mating flight of the queen. That queen emerges, and within the first 2 weeks of life, she takes off with her mating flight. She's gonna mate up with 20 drones in the drone congregation area. It is actually further than what your personal hives are. Your drones are not gonna mate with your virgin queens. Your virgin queen is actually gonna fly past the mileage of where your drones will fly to and go to another congregation of drone bees. So, and she'll fly through it, and as she's flying through, these males with those big compound eyes have to catch her, visual tracking, and then they get up and fly behind her. They mate in the air. So we still are trying to track that, figure that out. We fully don't know it. We don't know what rings with the congregation areas. We do know they come back to them several times, you know, repeatedly, you know, year after year. But we don't know how they've decided it or whatever. But if that male was successful with mating with her, when they go to split off, his endophallus actually gets removed. It rips out his intestines and everything. His endophallus, it stays in the virgin queen bee, continue to pump in the sperm as he falls to the ground and dies, because he just had the back half of his body ripped off. So again, it is tough to be a male. Their only one job is to hopefully successfully mate with a queen, and it's gonna be instant death. And if they don't get to mate with a queen, at the end of the season, they get kicked out, which is starvation death. Claire, did you?
They also, while they're inside the hive, they're not having sex inside the
Yeah,
hive.
so there's no mating or nothing like that happens inside the hive. They do not do, like I said, so your genetics also with, a lot of us in the clubs, we get together and we try to, like I say, queen rearing and so forth, and we talk about where we're getting queens from, or, you know, the stronger genetics that we have. I want good strong drones in my hives, because the hives that's not even half a mile from my house, my bees go over there, my drones are mating with their queens, their drones come and mate with my queens. So you have this cross genetics also that happens up there in the sky that we cannot control. But we do try to influence by making sure whatever original genetics are out there at neighboring apiaries are going to be something that is good in our hives. One of the things with the African bees, she was talking about the Africanized bees, the only way that they're finding it is they have to do the microscopy genetic testing on them to see if they actually have the Africanized genes. If they do, first off, we're trying to eliminate and remove those. So there are some states, if you find a swarm, you can't even, and you find the queen, you actually have to kill the queen, you have to bring in a mated queen that you know where it was mated from to try to get that Africanized genetics out of the bees. Even though, as you saw, they're great honey producers, they're, this and that, they're also very aggressive, they're a lot more dangerous. We don't want that, over the cost, the price of someone's life over a bucket of honey. I don't want aggressive bees, especially since I'm the one that messes with them. They'll be aggressive with me first. So again, the significance of drones. So they ensure the diversity of genetics by mating past home colony DCAs, and they live until the drone eviction. 14.5 days in pupal stage compared to the 12 days for workers and only 7 days for a queen. This allows that Varroa destructor mite, which you're gonna learn about, have 2.5 more days to develop in the drone brood. And that's really important. So you guys just make note of that. You're gonna learn about it later, but you don't need to know it today. Colony level reproduction is superorganism reproduction, which equals swarming. This is what the bees are wired to do. This is their strongest instinct. Their strongest instinct is survival and reproduction, but not of themselves. It is of the superorganism, the whole entire colony. That is their goal. So swarming is planned, is division of the colony to produce 2 new colonies. The queen's pheromones that inhibit rearing replacement queens are weaker in the spring. That's why they're gonna make swarm cells and supersedure cells and things like that. And the colony gets overcrowded, they don't have space, so they, the new queens, when they're about to hatch, that's when that old queen leaves. That's the only other time she'll leave her hive, is when they are swarming. So for mating, she will live there until she either dies or because they need to swarm. The 3 situations that they will raise a new queen is preparation for swarming, B, supersedure, they're gonna replace the queen, and they will replace her because she's either A, defective, she was not well bred, maybe she only mated with 8 drones versus 20, so she doesn't have enough sperm in her spermatheca, which is the area where she stores the sperm to keep mating, to keep laying these fertilized eggs. She was injured, like that bee that I've got with her little deformed wing. She's failing and old, she's 3 to 5 years old. Emergency panic mode, emergency, oh no, Kinley squished the queen, putting that frame back in. Oh my gosh, I pulled out that frame and I was looking too far and that queen just hopped off. And then she flew. Oh my God, where'd she go? It has happened to me more than once. So, in fact, I've done inspections with David before and we're like, well, the queen should be here. No, the queen was sitting in the lid. Nowhere where they were supposed to be. In fact, that's how we got that Auburn queen. She got onto the lid and we stuck the box on top of her and we kind of squished her. So typical supersedure cells, when you go looking at frames and so forth, again, like I said, biology, not just of the bee physically, but also of different things you're gonna see inside the hive biology. So you're typically gonna find bees located in the middle of the frame for supersedure cells. And that's kind of what they're gonna look like. They kind of hang in the middle of the frame, looking like a weird looking peanut, just hanging in the front. And then the typical swarm cells are located toward the bottom of the frame typically, and you're gonna find those down here at the bottom. So when you go and inspect in your hives and you've got 2 deep boxes, you just wanna do quick peeks. Sometimes all you gotta do is just crack in between them boxes, have that strong muscle lifted up, you stick your eyeballs in there, and if you see any of these hanging towards the bottom, you need to do something better than inspect because you're getting ready to lose some of your bees, half of them, along with the old queen. When you see this situation or those queen situations, you have to start assessing and thinking about what you're going to do. Are you gonna let them do what they're gonna do naturally? Or are you going to try to prevent it? Are you gonna split them? And a lot of those options are gonna come to you in these further classes. This is a really great picture here. It shows a little bit of everything. These are drone brood cells. They kind of stick up further, looks like a bullet. We've got, the worker cells, they're kind of flat. You've got some queen cells. Right here also, you can see down here, there was some larvae. So that was just a really interesting picture that has a lot of different characteristics. And then back to this frame here, this is the one that Kathy shared in the very beginning. There are different types of breeds of bees. And again, we suggest in the beginning, you start with your basic. You know, the one that's, you know, kind of, it's up to you as a beekeeper how much money you want to waste. And you can waste it. It's easy to waste it. Just don't listen to what other people have already done that have told you. When you have 10 people say, I've tried that, that didn't work, you can be number 11 to try it and it not work also. You might be that one lucky person who actually was successful, so you're an odd person out, it did work for you, but the majority normally, you know, I'm buying, in fact, I need to order packages from you this year again. Why am I doing that? Because I had some of my bees just leave. They just left. I don't even know why, they just left. So I'm gonna have to replace those bees, and it's because those hives are in a shady area that I need to move them from, you know, to, you know, and those kind of things. So when we're talking about that African trait, you can see it's got an awesome varroa mite resistance, higher than all the rest. And varroa mites, you're gonna find later between that, that's probably our worst pest that we've got going on right now. But they are also the most defensive. If I'm working bees, if I wanna go between defensive number 10 or defensive number 2, I'm a brand new beekeeper. Number 2 is intimidating enough when they're mad at you because you're robbing honey. I would hate to be number 10, like Kathy was saying, with these other bees, these other breeds, with these lower numbers, when I get in a hive, I start out with 30 mad bees. If I walk half a block, I might still only have 3 bees messing with me, still following me. If it's Africanized bees, you're gonna start out with 3,000 bees. If you've walked a half a block, you're still gonna have 2,000 of those bees with you. That's the difference of why the Africanized bees are so much more. They're very aggressive, they're very dangerous. We are trying to make sure that we do not keep their genetics bred. So other than that, that is the end of my
Can you go
talk.
back?
Yeah,
Cause I didn't stick on this, cause I knew you were gonna be hitting on.
yeah.
Okay, so she's talking about the defensive, you see, like you look and go, oh, buckfast is 1, which is the next one over, and you go, I don't wanna try buckfast. What that chart right there does not tell you, that you won't learn, is when the buckfast replace their queen, that queen's gonna be a number 7 in defensive when they replace it, so every other generation of buckfast is a butt to deal with, no kidding, so.
Okay.
You know, so it's not, so this shows like a generalization.
A generalized, but this is not the straight numbers.
Yeah,
This
so
is the
just let you know,
generalized
this is kind of like
numbers. Okay.
generalized numbers, so
Yeah.
this is like really cool, but you can take and analyze, and there's more to it than just, this is a
Yeah.
cool chart, but don't live and breathe by it.
Yeah, like I said, these, and all of beekeeping is, it's all, I mean, I won't say it's subjective, but
Yeah, and like
it kind of
Caucasians love to
is. You know, there's the
swarm.
generalist. What is it, Claire?
I just wanted to kind of also say that you might have an Italian, and your Italian queen goes out to mate. She is not,
Won't be purebred.
Yeah, yeah,
she doesn't discriminate.
yeah. So whoever's whatever drones catch up to her to mate with her, he said you don't know what she's mating with. She could mate with any of them,
So
yeah.
Italians don't necessarily
Yeah.
stay with Italians.
So, like I said, so they will intermingle, and that's why, again, where it's important to, you know, know your neighbors, share queens with your neighbors, and that so forth, so that way you know what genetics are in your neighbor's hives next door, so that's the genetics you get back. I appreciate all of you guys. Did anybody have any other questions? I know it's a lot, so you guys, like I said, like Kathy said, just start making your little notes and asking us questions
And ask questions,
between.
because I'm not here next week, y'all.